Hi everybody, this is the Properly Freelance podcast. I'm Jenni and today I am joined by Claire Arnott. Hello Claire.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you so much for joining me. Just to let everybody listening, the millions of listeners that I'm sure we've gathered by now, just to let you know that today we're going to be talking about starting out as a freelancer and talking about our two kind of experiences of that, comparing those experiences, maybe sharing some hints and tips around that, and anything else that might come up along the way. But first of all, I'm going to find out a little bit about Claire. Claire and I have never met, but we are both members of the Impact Hub in Brixton. So we've kind of come together through that network, which is a rather fab network. And we thought it'd be good to just find out a bit kind of about each other to start with. So tell me what you actually do, Claire. What is your freelancing career?
So my area is research and analysis in the social sector. So I work with clients ranging from charities, social enterprises, foundations, businesses, to help them explore interest areas within the kind of social change space. So that can be farming in East Africa, it can be reducing gang violence in London, very, very wide breadth. And a lot of my work is around how to monitor and evaluate social change programming.
Wow, it sounds like something I could maybe do with in my work actually, because I work mostly in charity sector, not internationally, but yeah. I'm interested that you are a consultant, because I think that for some of us who are freelancers who haven't quite achieved that aim yet, that's kind of like the holy grail of freelancing, to become a consultant. So we might be able to talk about that, which would be fun. So could you give a little overview of your kind of freelance, your journey to this point in terms of your career? How did it come about? Have you been self-employed for a long time? Have you always considered yourself a freelancer? How did that come about for you?
So I've been freelance for about 18 months. So prior to that I've always been a consultant. Prior to that I was managing director of a small kind of boutique strategy consultancy doing a lot of the same work. We were based up in North London, but again working on monitoring, evaluation and research analysis for clients. And so I loved working there. So I worked there for 6 years and just decided that I needed a change. I needed to not see, as much as I love the people, not see the same faces day in, day out, and kind of just have a chance to go out on my own and get back to the projects, I think, because running an organisation obviously involves a lot of other bits and pieces. So it wasn't actually a plan to become freelance. I basically, because we were such a small team, I said to my colleagues in about October, so I had kind of two roles, and so I said to both kind of my colleagues in about the October, right, I'm going to leave kind of end of the year, kind of start of next year, and kind of was looking around for jobs, looking around for things I wanted to do, hadn't found anything, and by the time it kind of got to cut off point, and then the day after I finished, I got offered a contract for 6 months, working within another consultancy. So I did that for 6 months, and then kind of while I was doing that, more and more people kind of heard that I was perhaps available to do a day here, a day there, and so I started doing that. Did some work with my old consultancy, and then after my contract finished about kind of this time last year, I started responding to tenders that were kind of out in the market and winning contracts that way. So yeah, I've been doing it for about a year, kind of officially in the kind of properly freelance.
Yeah, in that sense.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, the question I'd written down was, did you jump or were you pushed? Because I think that's a really interesting thing, that you hear these stories about people who are like in this 9-to-5 job and it's a grind and they really want to go freelance, and it's a kind of huge, great wrench to let that go and to suddenly have none of the security of a payroll job. But it sounds like you were similar to me in a sense, slightly pushed because it's circumstances that make you end up doing that, but it's been a positive move for you.
Oh, massively. I absolutely love the freedom. So I love that I have, I can work from anywhere, I can work what hours work for me, but also I've got the freedom and the flexibility to do other things. So if I want to spend a couple of days doing pro bono work, that's completely up to me, and kind of I don't have a team to kind of support, etc. I don't have to manage people.
Yes,
which is
how lovely.
and also, yeah, I can do other things. So we've just closed a business, mine and my brother's business, doing furniture and kind of looking at new business opportunities. So I've got kind of more freedom to do that, freedom to write, freedom. Yeah,
great.
I guess freedom would be the word.
Yeah, and I'm interested in the fact that you were doing a job very similar to what you do now, but on a payroll basis. Because I know people who have worked in other industries like publishing, for example, where they're sort of working in that 9 to 5 way, and they're seeing freelancers sort of working for the same companies, maybe getting paid a bit more, working on a slightly different basis, and thinking, oh, actually, why can't I just take my skills and go and do that? Is that something that you'd seen before? Sort of compared yourself with other
I don't think I
contractors?
really had. So I think I absolutely loved the consultancy and I loved the work we did and I loved the team. So I think it was never that. It was more, I think I did get a bit jealous of the fact that they could just come in and do the projects, and they didn't have to manage the kind of the team and worry about the profit and loss of the company and all of that kind of stuff. But no, I don't think I ever really considered freelancing as kind of like the holy grail, because I already had the kind of a lot of autonomy and kind of the kind of freedom within the company to do what I wanted. It was more just my time.
The topic I wanted to talk about with you, which I suggested because we're sort of early within the podcast and there might be people listening who are thinking, oh, I'd quite like to become a freelancer, or, oh, I've just been pushed into being one and I don't know really what to do. So I suggested that maybe we talk about starting out as a topic. And it's interesting because you then said to me, oh, I don't know if I'm the best person to do that because I've always done this role. But I think what I'm more interested in, and what listeners as a whole might be interested in, is the transition to freelancing, and not so much learning your trade, because I think most people who decide to do something on a freelance basis, you'd hope they've got some idea how to do the thing that they're doing. But the actual starting out being self-employed, so the things that you have had to kind of work out for yourself, the things that have surprised you, the things that are, boring, annoying, difficult, joyful, whatever, about the process of self-employment. So some of that, I guess, is around kind of, for me, it's about like all the legal stuff and the money stuff. I remember being kind of terrified and confused by all this stuff that, you were supposed to know as a freelancer, and just wondering, like, where do I get this information? Is anyone going to, think that I'm in the right position to do this? What have been the challenges for you, or the things that have stuck out in your head about making that work?
One thing that I hadn't anticipated was the amount you learn from your colleagues. And just, we were a small consultancy, so we never really had money for kind of, very like lovely, expensive professional development, but just kind of conversations you have with your colleagues. We're in a shared office space, a social impact office space, so just conversations over coffee. So I think I really, really missed that, and having people to challenge me. Because oftentimes, you come into a situation because a client doesn't have any idea, and so they're not going to challenge you. And so kind of, a little bit that. What else was a real challenge? Knowing what to register myself as was a back and forth.
So your company name?
So I'm a sole trader.
Yeah, but you still have to have a name, don't you, that is either your name. So mine is just my name.
Oh, is it?
Because I've never understood why, like, I've never thought about needing to call myself something different. But also, I think that's partly because I do lots of different things.
Yeah.
So I can't put, because what is your company name? Or your,
your
sole
trader?
Claire
Arnott Consulting, I think.
So do you have you limited yourself to only consulting? Is that okay?
I hadn't really thought about this.
See, if I'd 10 years ago when I started freelancing, if I'd put a verb after my name, I think I'd now be going, oh God, I can't do all these other things I want to do instead.
What would the other verbs that you would use, like aside from consultant, be?
So I started out when I was first self-employed, I was doing arts administration.
Yeah.
And then I moved into doing, kind of all of the things I do now. I try not to do arts administration. I do a bit of arts management. I do access support work, which is working with disabled artists. I do audio describing for blind and visually impaired people mostly in an arts context, and I do workshop facilitation. And there's definitely a point where I would have put workshop leading and kind of theatre directing at the top of that list. But in recent times, I've realised that I really like the variety of stuff, so I don't think I could pick one to put in my title.
Yeah.
But you're happy with consulting?
It's quite broad, until this conversation, I'd never thought about it. I was like, I'm a consultant. I've always,
come to make you panic.
Yeah, I guess the only other area that I feel like I don't sometimes kind of explicitly kind of have in my elevator pitch is the kind of the workshop facilitation and that kind of thing. So that tends to be something that I don't get approached for. I don't kind of bid for. I basically just get it as through kind of friends who know that I can do it.
So maybe the name that you choose, because it doesn't actually have any legal ramifications, does it? I think in the back of my mind, when I started out and had to choose a name, I was a bit worried that if I said I was, an arts administrator, then HMRC might come knocking at my door saying, how dare you earn some money doing something else? And it's just, you just don't know these things when if you're especially, I was like 23 and just didn't know what I was doing. But for you, you've thought about it more from a kind of marketing perspective. What is it that I need to plug myself to be able to do?
Yeah, and it partly came from kind of setting up my website and kind of working out what I wanted my website to say. So it kind of was a bit of a dual process of kind of writing all of the marketing blurb around what it is I do and kind of finding a name and a URL. Is that the right word? Yeah, URL.
A USP and a URL.
Yes.
Oh, because you need both. Yeah. Because I guess it does get more complicated, doesn't it? If you decide that on your website or whatever you want to call yourself something which is different to what you called yourself when you registered with HMRC. Yeah. It's just one of those things to think about, probably, isn't it? And I don't think there's probably any major downside to doing what I did, which is just to be your name for a legal basis, because then you can add to that when you are looking for your domain name and all of that kind of thing. So maybe something that people might be interested to think about. Is there anything that you kind of wish you'd known before you decided to go freelance, or anything that you found difficult that then you had to find a workaround for?
Everyone said peaks and troughs, and I was like, I'll be fine. I was so arrogant. I don't think it was even arrogance. I think it was just like naivety, and I was just like, and I think because I had this very safe 6-month contract at the beginning, I was paid quite well and I was able to save quite a lot of money. But then I decided that contracting actually wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to do project-based stuff, which is kind of I'll get commissioned to do a piece of work, and there'll be an intensive bit at the beginning, and then there'll be a lull, and then there'll be another bit, and so you obviously get paid as per the kind of the work you're doing. So you'll get paid month 1, you'll get paid month 6, and you'll get paid and then obviously invoices don't come in as quickly as you think they will, or work gets delayed, and so you can't invoice until you finish that bit of work. And so actually doing your projections, while they look lovely and pretty and kind of in line with your mortgage repayments and your plans for holidays and etc. and all of that stuff, like when it comes to it, actually it doesn't work like that. And so actually there are some horrendous months where you're just thinking, and so I think I was a bit naive in the kind of spending the buffer I built up within that first 6 months.
And for me, I think tax money was a big one, in terms of, you've suddenly got, I mean, it wasn't a lot of money when I started out, but you've got money coming into your bank account, which might look like more than you would get if you were earning the same amount on payroll, because obviously that tax would be taken off at source. And this podcast will probably be going out around the time of the dreaded tax return deadline. So maybe the kind of time of year when people want some advice for how to do it better next time around. I was actually watching a programme that Martin Lewis, money saving expert, did on Channel 4 recently. It was called 10 things your kids should know, I think. I would so recommend it. I was like, 10 things I should know. It was like just really, really basic money advice. But one of the things was, it was advice he was giving out to teenagers, but he actually said one of them was about, if you become self-employed, don't spend your tax money. And on the one hand, you think, God, that's really obvious. But on the other hand, I don't know how many people actually have like a separate bank account that they siphon the money off into for their taxes.
But also, how do you know?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I try to do that. I do like transfer money into a different account each month, but it's all based on an estimate of what I'm going to earn in the year, because I just have it as a standing order, because I can't be bothered to work, sit down every month and do the depressing task of working out how little I've earned and how much tax I'm going to owe. It's an estimate for the year, and it's like, should I be pessimistic about this? Should I be optimistic? You know, how should I even work this out? But I do think it's worth doing, because if you get to, you know, your tax deadline, and the money that you owe in January is actually money that you should have accrued in tax by the previous March. So if you haven't got that in the bank, you're really in trouble, because you should have that plus another, like, almost another year's worth of tax. So it's too tempting to just have it sat there.
So this is now my issue, and it will be fine, but I basically, because I earned so much in the first 6 months of kind of being freelance, and I haven't actually done, so this January will be the tax return that I do for the majority of that 6 months. And then basically spent the next 6 months spending that buffer that I'd earned. And so actually I've, you know, at the time I was like, oh, I'm being so good about my tax. And then, you know, over kind of the lull months, it just got spent.
Yeah. I do think their way of communicating to you what you owe is, like, absolutely baffling. I think their website's got a lot better over the years that I've been freelancing.
Do they have a calculator now?
Oh, it's so bizarre, because they charge you. You do your return by the January, and then they give you a bill, which is the year to the previous March. Yeah. But then they also give you an estimated bill for the first 6 months of the subsequent year, because that's actually already gone. Yeah. And you can tell them if your earnings have fallen and you don't think you're going to owe that much. But unless you tell them that, then you're supposed to pay that sort of additional bill by July or something.
Oh gosh.
But honestly, I mean, I was, you know, okay at maths at school, and I find it just boggles my brain when I try to sit down, because you kind of want to. I've heard of people in the past being sent a tax bill 3 years late and told, oh, sorry, HMRC made a mistake, you owe this much money, and apparently it's sort of your responsibility to, you know, to know if your bill is right. And I'm like, how can anyone know? It's so difficult to match up what they're saying. I always just estimate it, and if it's within, like, hopefully the same sort of £1,000 bracket, then, you know, you just have to stop stressing about it at some point. But it's a bit ridiculous, the kind of way that they make you match these things up. Anyway, that's boring money talk, but woo! I think I'm slightly in love with Martin Lewis, so
okay, I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, you should watch it. It was really good. One of the other things that I remember a lot about starting out is the kind of, not desperation, but the slight underlying panic that I had about finding work kind of most of the time. And sometimes, you know, it would be going well, and other times I would just feel like, oh God, I've got nothing on. And I think the most sort of soul destroying aspect of it was sort of self-marketing and trying to send cold emails. And, you know, you're one person, you don't have the capacity to set up a call center or you know, pay anyone to do these things. And I would you know, really try to be thorough and strategic and structured about it. Like, this is the email I'm going to send. Try and personalize it and send it to this many people today, blah blah blah. And I would spend, you know, hours and hours and hours doing that. And then the work that I got would come from somewhere completely different. Like, you know, a contact who I didn't even consider like a professional contact or something. And you just think, oh God, what a waste of your time to be doing that. But you never know where the actual work will come from. I haven't really worked out a formula for this yet.
This is it, yeah. And I don't have enough data to know, because obviously I'm data driven, like enough data to know what I'm going to win, what I'm not going to win. Mm-hmm. It's all just, I think, oh, I'll put that in, but I'm never going to win that. And then I win it. And then I put something in and I'm like, well, I've got a pretty good chance. Like, I pretty much am their person. And then I don't get it. And I'm just a bit like, oh.
Yeah. Or you put in for stuff that you're not really even sure if you want it that bad, but you need something and then you get it and then you don't know. It can be really hard. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I found sort of a bit of a battle when I was starting out was that I was so scared of turning anything down or missing an opportunity that I would never book a holiday. And I would just, you know, you could go, in theory, you've got masses of freedom when you're a freelancer.
Yeah.
But if you never let yourself take a holiday because you're scared of, I've decided to christen it FOMO-OW, fear of missing out on work.
That's a good one.
And I've tried to get over it as kind of time has gone by.
It's a tricky one. So I started off going the other way. So I thought, I'm going to have a really quiet September. I'll book. So France and Spain, family holiday, then a Hindu in Switzerland, and
Lovely.
then a
The
week.
joy of freelancing.
Yeah, and then a week at home, and then a week in Cornwall. And then an amazing project came up that was 5 weeks with a week in Rwanda in that 1 week that I had off, and all the work had to be done around it. And I was like, well, it looks like I'm working through all of my holidays. And it was fine. It obviously wasn't ideal in terms of I didn't switch off, but
yeah.
And now I think I've got the same as you. Now I'm a bit afraid of doing that again and just having a mountain of work when I'm, in this lovely location.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like a whole episode in itself, really, to talk to people who do the kind of work which you can do remotely, because obviously there's that great temptation to say, oh, I can both have a holiday and do my work at the same time. And change of scenery is nice, but I guess, yeah, you might find as you go forward that you want to separate your work from your
at least for like a kind of a week. Yeah. Just having that freedom to completely switch off and maybe not even take the laptop.
Yeah.
Which is not something I've done since I went freelance.
Yeah. Have you had to kind of bluff your way through anything? I know you're saying that the work you're doing is similar to what you were doing before. Have you found that in terms of the actual kind of content of the work and what you've promised to do, have you kept it within your comfort zone, or have you found that kind of without a team around you, you've had to stretch yourself?
I've definitely probably sounded more confident about knowing what I'm doing than I have been, and then gone away and done a lot of Googling so that I can design things. And as you say, it's hard without a team, and kind of just to lean over to a colleague and say, oh, you did that project, can you? So it is hard, but
yeah, we talked about this on the previous episode with Sarah Weiler when we were talking about imposter syndrome and kind of finding the kind of threshold at which it's useful to stretch yourself, and we decided that it wasn't lying. It's not about lying. It's about kind of trying out words and phrases and labeling yourself in a certain way. I definitely had to kind of bluff my way through a few jobs when I first started out, and actually I don't even know if I should tell this story, but I'm going to. So one of the things that I do, I work a lot with blind and visually impaired people, and one of the first jobs that I did supporting a blind person, so this again just came through a friend who I knew from kind of through another friend. She happened to work in the arts, but I didn't know her through a professional context at all, and she desperately needed someone to cover this support work job that she couldn't do, and she knew that I was interested in that area. I think I had only completely theoretical knowledge of it. I don't think I'd ever guided a blind person before, which is kind of important that you know what you're doing. I had the most basic little bit of training. They taught me what to do, and the guy was really nice. And generally we had a nice day, and most of it is fairly logical, I think, to my brain. But something awful did happen where I was I think I was concentrating so hard on watching the floor and making sure that he didn't trip up on anything. And I'm very short, and he was quite tall, and I basically walked him into a tree branch that was overhanging from above. So he forgave me. He was absolutely fine, no harm done. And I have since improved my guiding skills immensely.
You look up and down now.
I look up and down. Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's kind of, there's a metaphor in there for like how focused in you can get on the thing that you're worried about, and how easy it can be to miss all the other things that are going on around you. One thing that I would really love to find out your opinion on is whether is freelancing inevitably stressful and exhausting? Because I know a lot of freelancers and people who run their own businesses who kind of just work every hour of the day, and because you're juggling your own workload and because your personal phone is your work phone, they kind of exude this idea that stress and exhaustion is inevitable. And I feel like this is a journey that I've been on, where I've been in that place and then I've tried to go, oh, okay, no, I'm in control of some of this stuff and I'm changing my relationship with that. I just wondered what your experience of that is.
So I'm probably quite an annoying person in that I'm a lot less stressed.
Good. No, that's good.
So I love that it's just me, and so a lot of my work is kind of remote and kind of I can do it when I want, and obviously there are deadlines, but they are just me. I don't have to wait for so and so to finish their section and so. So I'm a lot less stressed in terms of that, and also I feel like running a company, I had just a million, like I had to ensure we were insured, I had to make sure that there was enough coffee, I had to make sure that the printer was working, and all of that kind of stuff, and then so and so would need me, and so kind of all of that stuff. I don't have any meetings that aren't necessary in my diary. I don't have any random people emailing me. I also, because I don't have a company website anymore, it's just my website. I don't have random cold calls all the time and all of that stuff where you're just like, oh, that does sound interesting, but I don't have time now.
Who's going to pay me to do that? Yeah.
And so kind of all of that kind of peripheral stuff that sits around, a wider company, I don't have anymore. So it's just me and my projects.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Like, that's exactly the kind of thing I think people will want to hear. And I think it relates a lot to realizing that you're in control, because some of the times that I've been the most kind of stressed and exhausted about projects is because, yes, I'm freelancing, but I'm maybe running something that's got a lot of stakeholders involved or is, funded in a certain way, and I start to kind of bend the work towards what all of those different people want, which is important, especially when you're working in, with charitable money and all of those things. But the vast majority of the time, when you actually go back to those stakeholders and kind of consult with them in a way that includes your experience as the person running the work, they are going to say, we don't want you to be stressed and exhausted. Like, that's important. For example, I do a lot of work that's funded by the Arts Council, and I know that they don't want their artists to be stressed and exhausted. They want you to be paid for, a decent rate for the hours that you're doing. And I think it sometimes takes a little while to realise that and to kind of know what you're worth, and then that starts to kind of feed through into making the most of the freelance experience. So
that's not great. To say some I have had some experiences where you are beholden to other people for the kind of the deadlines and the work, and you literally sat twiddling your thumbs knowing that once that email comes in, all hell will break loose, and you will be nose to the grindstone for the next 2 weeks, and there's nothing you can do to hurry that person up, even though they said they'd get back to you last week, and you could have then done it in a lovely leisurely fashion and done a very good job. But I'd say those are kind of more few and far between as a kind of
timescales. I think can be quite important, even if you're working with somebody that you know quite well. I find it, if I'm going to agree to a piece of work, so for example, sometimes I do audio description for like a film or a visual art piece, and I have to wait for that piece of work to be ready and sent to me or shown to me before I can write the description. And then I have to wait sometimes for the description to be approved by the artist if we've agreed that they're going to have a say in it, and then I have to get to a recording studio and record the description with my voice. And I find it's really helpful in that process to say, I will need you to provide me with the work by this date, and then I block out some time. I'll write the description on these dates. I'll send it to you by this date. You need to get back to me with any feedback by this date. And that's kind of, stuff that in a lot of industries it's very standard to work like that. I'm not sure that some people freelancing in the way that I do. Certainly when I started out, I wasn't necessarily that firm with my timescales, but I do that now because I need to know, I might think, oh, this week I'm only going to work 20 hours or something. I don't want to just be sat twiddling my thumbs waiting for it to come when I could be off just doing something else. So yeah, I think the more you do that, the more you can relax into the kind of lifestyle as well. Have any kind of freelancing story or confession that you'd like to share with us from your 18 months experience of freelancing?
A big challenge for me is if I've done a piece of work within a wider piece of work and the client hasn't been happy with the wider piece of work and refuses to pay the invoice. So I will have been brought in by a consultancy to help on a piece of work, and obviously the majority of those people are salaried members of staff. And even if that client knows that I'm a freelance member of staff, and if they refuse to pay their invoice because they're not happy or whatever's going on, or if they've not got the money from the funder, I don't know whether they know and they don't care that I don't get paid. And so oftentimes, it'll be 6 months and they'll be withholding the money, and I don't get paid because, this consultancy might not have enough cash flow to pay my bill. And so,
is that to do with the way that your contracts are? So you have a contract with the consultancy?
So if I know them well enough, I don't, and this is probably a mistake I've made, but also I don't have it in me to force people to pay me if their money, if the money is
even
not
if it was in a contract. It very much works like that in my industry. Like I was told many years ago by someone that I worked with, oh well, contracts are really just for kind of, it's good to clarify everyone's intentions, but no one in theatre can afford to sue each other. So I'm exactly the same as you. If I'm working with somebody that I know, I don't always push them to give me a contract, but I guess I do have in the back of my mind the fact that I could lose that money if I don't have it in writing. And so if it's a lot of money, I would.
And that was a big one for me, and it was, so the main one I'm thinking of, it was a client, and I thought I'd done a very good piece of work, and every time they said, yeah, we like that, let's move on to the next stage, and then I'd be in the middle of the next stage, and then they'd come back and say, we've redesigned that last bit of work that you've done. And I was like, as a consultant, it's incredibly challenging if you said, yes, I like it, and then not giving me a chance to iterate. I'm not obviously going to get everything right the first time. And so not giving me that chance, and then saying at the end of the, oh well, we weren't happy, without you giving me the chance, and kind of and also when you fit into kind of a wider piece of work, well, we're not going to pay your invoice, it's a little bit heartbreaking, because I do tend to put my heart and soul into my work, and kind of I've got pride in my work, and then you don't get paid for it, and it is horrible. And there were a lot of tears the first time that happened.
Wow. So contracts, you think, might be the moral of that story?
I think in trying to protect yourself with contracts, and saying, if I do the work, but also kind of setting basic levels of practice with clients, saying, what, as you say, kind of doing that kind of feedback. So I'm going to deliver it on this day, and then you're going to give me feedback by this day, and we'll spend this week iterating it, and then we'll move on to the next stage.
It gives you more power, doesn't it, in that situation where someone hasn't met the agreed date
and you followed the process.
To at least turn around and say, well, it's going to cost you a bit more now, or to negotiate in that way.
And kind of, if you're a wider piece of work, if you're part of a wider piece of work, even if you're coming in the middle, be true to that for yourself, and just say, look, do you mind if I just do my little kind of, this is how I work, and this is what I want from you, and this is what you'll get from me, and kind of not assuming that other partners within the project would have done that.
Do you have to let go of, I'm quite a perfectionist about things, and I think I often overpromise, because sometimes I might do something which, like you say, is sort of part of a wider piece of work, and I might see a place where I could sort of do something slightly outside the scope of my role, or outside of the time that I'm supposed to get paid for, but I feel like it will make the end result better, and I feel like it will make people like me, and we all just want to be liked, don't we? And I overpromise sometimes, or literally just do stuff without thinking, oh god, I'm not getting paid for this. And it's hard, because we're human beings. If you see something that needs doing and it's easy to do and you can make the work better,
I definitely think I definitely do that, and I guess quite often, if I can, I will build some kind of margin into my day rate if a project can allow for it, just so that I can then on other projects maybe A, take a lower day rate, but also B, do the kind of the extra work that that they maybe can't afford to pay you.
That's it. I think there's another episode in here as well about kind of pricing and how to know your own value, but I'm definitely thinking a lot at the moment about, because I need to put my prices up basically, because I've been going sort of in my properly freelance role for the best part of a year now, and it's going fine, but I know that I could be earning a lot more, but I know that a lot of the clients I've worked for this year couldn't afford a lot more, and I'm thinking about, well, I should just have like a rate for non-profit and a rate for profit, and yes, that's varying the value I place on myself, but I can do that if I want to. Like, I can do what I want to do, basically.
I basically sit in meetings trying to calculate what I think people can afford. And so my day rate varies by about £150.
And I think you will get a lot of advice from other places, sort of very earnest advice about how to start your business, which says don't base it on what the client can afford, base it on what you're worth and what you need to earn. But I don't think most people are doing that.
No, I definitely don't do that.
it depends. I mean, we both, work, I think, a lot around sectors where you're going to lose work if you do that. So know your sector and be confident in knowing your sector, I would say. I've got some questions that I'm going to be asking all of my guests, and I'm going to be sharing my own experiences as well on these. What is the most annoying thing that you've had to do, annoying or ridiculous thing you've had to do this week as a result of being a freelancer?
There's been a lot of moving money around because I've got 4 outstanding invoices that have been outstanding for varying amounts of time, but some of them for a while. And so just moving money back and forth out of the kind of the savings pot, out of the tax pot, just to make sure that I've got enough money, because in my projections the money would have been in my bank account 6 weeks ago, but it's not. So I basically, the money apps on my phone, I'm literally always on them being like, right, what money have I got where? And so just spending.
It's that thing, isn't it, of if all your friends are on payroll and everyone's sort of celebrating, because we are recording this on the last day of a month. I won't say which month because it might seem like a continuity error, but it's payday for all of our friends today. And we're like, I don't know, maybe that invoice that I've been waiting for 3 weeks or 3 months will have been paid. I just don't know.
So just spending so much time keeping an eye on money that I've just never had to do before, and just kind of wondering.
Do you have a particular app that helps you, or are you just talking about sort of online banking apps?
Just my online banking apps. So I basically, I have, I'm very into my Excel, obviously data. So I basically have a number of different Excel sheets that I use to kind of track invoicing, profit and loss, and all of that kind of, and projections. So just monitoring those, checking the date I sent them, checking my bank account, checking the date I sent them, checking my bank account, checking when my mortgage is due, checking when my credit card statements are due.
Yeah, I've kind of got a weird thing with that this week, which is that actually my kind of best month of the year was a couple of months ago, but it took ages for some of my clients to pay me. So all that money has just landed, and I'm suddenly going, I'm really rich. And I know that it's not, like, it doesn't reflect, because I had a little spending spree a couple of months ago when I got that work.
Because you think, I've got loads of money, but it's not actually in your bank account.
And then when it lands, you're like, I can do it again. So I think I kind of doubly spend that money when that happens, which is not so great. My annoying thing this week has been technology. Partly relating to the podcast, actually, which I'm not sure I could call it work because it doesn't pay me or anyone, but it reflects a lot of the things that I do a lot as a freelancer. I have been trying to make these microphones work, and I have spent hours and hours and hours buying different adapters, teaching myself how to use software. I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of know that you should be able to do it yourself because a lot of people are doing it. But then when you start to Google it and read advice, you get a lot of different advice. And, I've listened to some podcasts where people are clearly, recording in a tin can, and I'm happy to listen to them because I'm interested in what they have to say. And then I've, read some other stuff and listened to some how to make your podcasts where people are saying, you must have this, that and the other, and you must spend hundreds of pounds on equipment or no one will ever listen to it. So I've come in somewhere in the middle in the end. But the worst part of it was, I think I had to buy 3 different things from Amazon to try and make the 2 microphone setup work. And the first one didn't work. The second one actually made it go backwards, so the computer stopped recognizing even one microphone. I was just like, oh my god, I want to throw it out of the window.
Just a little pile of discarded technology by your desk.
Oh my god. And I've eventually got to a point with this where it's still not perfect, but I'm much happier with it. I think the sound on this will be better than previous ones where I'd been sort of still playing around a bit, but it really does reflect something that I think happens a lot as a freelancer, like the hours that I can pour into software-based stuff on my computer trying to make something work, because you don't have an IT department, and you're constantly being told, you can do this, that and the other, or you should get an app, it will optimize this, but you can't know if it's right for you until you've tried it, and you can invest hours and hours in trying it, and I would say it's the thing that's most likely to get me in a rage or actually make me cry. I reckon in the last 10 years probably computers are the thing I've cried about the most often. Let's end with something a bit more positive. What is the best thing this week for you about being a freelancer?
So I impromptu Is that a word? I don't think so.
It is now.
Took off last week and went to Devon and kind of did the odd bit of work, the odd bit of email, but for the most part didn't do any work. And then this week I've just come back and I'm just so excited about everything, and I've got like a really busy week, but I'm just loving it, and I'm kind of feel like I've rejuvenated myself. And you know, it's that kind of ability to take off a week when you are a little bit quieter, without having to kind of plan it in advance and do all of that handover that was typically fairly horrendous part of taking holiday when you're in a full-time job. So just taking that week off and saying this is my week, and then now I'm all excited again.
Oh, amazing. Was it nice weather in Devon?
Very cold. Yes. Very, very cold. So we did play on the beach a little bit, but then had to go inside because the little ones were getting a little bit blue in the face.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, especially when you live in London and you don't have a garden and all those things, that's a great bonus, isn't it?
Yeah.
My best thing this week about freelancing was using the Impact Hub passport scheme. So you maybe don't know about this.
No, I don't.
I mean, when I say passport, it could be really exciting. You could go and use the Impact Hub in South America or anywhere you like. So when you're a member of any of the Impact Hubs, you qualify for something called passport, which means you can use a different Impact Hub actually anywhere in the world. It's supposed to be for 1 day a month. There was actually a guy who travelled the world, someone from Impact Hub Brixton, whose name I forget, travelled the world, and I think it was actually based around like visiting as many of them as he could.
I think I met him at the Impact Hub in Berlin.
Ah, there you go.
And he was like doing it on the train or something.
I think what's his name? Can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, wasn't that a great adventure? I mean, this now makes what I'm going to say seem really pathetic. I went to the Impact Hub in Islington. But it was really nice. So I was doing a job last week up in Shoreditch, and I had a sort of funny split shift. I had to watch a rehearsal in the morning and then a performance in the evening to prepare some audio description, and I had a kind of 3-hour gap in the middle of the day, which can be one of those annoying things that happens when you're freelancing, and you end up, you know, sitting in cafes, spending loads of money on coffee, thinking, oh God, I can't leave my laptop when I go to the toilet, and all that annoying stuff. So Impact Hub has a few different branches in London. So I went into the Islington one, which is quite near to Old Street.
Oh, I'm going there later.
Maybe
I'll pop in. Can you pop in?
You can pop in. Tell them you're a member of Impact Hub Brixton, and you can spend some time there on a passport.
Because I was a little bit stressed because I've got 2 hours this afternoon in Old Street.
It was so lovely. They were really nice. And what time is your 2-hour break? Because it's Wednesday.
Oh, will I get cake? I've finished lunch at like 1:32, and then my next meeting's at 4.
They have tea and cake at 4, so you're going to miss it. I was really lucky last week. I was there from 2 till 5, and they had their tea and cake break, and they were really friendly and lovely. Somebody there who's a designer had been working on a design for a card game, so he brought the card game to the tea break. And it was also on the same afternoon while I was there kind of just doing a bit of work on my laptop, I found out that I'd got some funding for a project for next year. And when you get good news and you're working on your own, it can be a bit kind of weird, isn't it? Because you don't know who to tell. And I was like, I'm going to try this and see how friendly they are. So I just like sort of turned to the person next to me and went, can I high five you? And he was like, yeah, of course you can. And then loads of people came round and were like, oh, what's happened? And I shared my nice news with them. I'd never met any of them before, but they were really friendly. And it was kind of a nice reminder that there are loads of people out there doing, you know, all sorts of different things, freelance, on a freelance basis. And it's great that there's a network there that can kind of connect us to do stuff like podcasting, but also to, you know, just celebrate stuff. And I think we need more of that actually. Because it can be a lonesome life sometimes, but visit an Impact Hub if you're near one. It's my top tip. So thank you so much, Claire. Maybe we'll get you back on another episode to talk about something else once we've got millions more listeners. Bye.
You've been listening to the Properly Freelance podcast with Jenni Elborn, and my guest was Claire Arnott. My theme music is by Sarah Weiler, and the podcast is supported by Impact Hub Brixton.